Welcome to Chat with the Lawyer. I'm your host, Walla Blagay, and today we have attorney K. Lawson Wellington from the Wellington Law DC, who focuses on DUI cases. Very important because many of us know somebody who has had a DUI. So you're in demand. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so tell us a little bit about your practice and how you got into it.
Sure. I've practiced now for the last 20 years or so. Come September, my first bar was Maryland. I did work with the courts for many years, and I think that was the most important part of learning my craft, because I did a wide variety of cases. But I think after some time, somehow, having done by trial and error, by the way, and lost some DUI cases, I got to learn the DUI landscape, and I've become fairly competent at it. I've gotten some good results for some clients. I get a fair amount of dismissals for clients, and one thing becomes another. A client refers a client, that kind of stuff.
Now, you've been branded as a DUI lawyer, and how did that come about?
Again, if you win, if you win, somehow a reputation becomes developed. Online is where it is these days, and I think I've had some clients who had some good results, who were kind enough to go to my pages on Facebook, for example, and left some good reviews. And when people search these days, they search primarily online first, Google, and they come to the page, they like the reviews, and they then come in and say, you know what, I like what I see, I would love for you to be my lawyer, and here I am.
That's good. Now let's get into this because it starts with the breathalyzer, right? Let's get into the whole process. Where do we start with DUIs?
Actually, it starts with the stop.
The stop. Okay.
And all too often, the client will say, well, he didn't stop me. Well, you know what? Once he came to your car, he has stopped you. Because sometimes the client is in the car asleep.
You can get a DUI for being in the car asleep?
You can. Because a DUI doesn't mean driving. A DUI also means having control of the vehicle.
But you're asleep.
You're asleep, but if you're asleep behind the wheels, it's a DUI. Because technically you are in control of the vehicle. You could literally, let's say for example, the keys are in your pocket. You could literally go into your pocket, so you'd wake up, go into your pocket and say, you know what, I'm going to drive right now. So if there is the ability to wake up, reach for the keys, start the car, that could be a DUI. No.
Wow.
You.
Now, so then the idea is don't get into the driver's seat if you drink.
Yes, and I mean I say that so much to clients who come in already with a DUI, unfortunately, but I try to telegraph on my pages. Do not be in the car. Do not be behind the wheels of the car. Sit in the back. Sit next door in the other seat, but do not be behind the wheels of the car.
So have you seen it where a police followed a drunk person to the car while they were getting in?
That's interesting because I have a case right now, and you hear things over the years. Clients say, you know what, the officer followed me, or his partner or another officer somehow told him to follow me. Years ago, I had a young man who said he was in Adams Morgan, and the report is what led on to what happened, because he didn't see them, but they somehow saw him staggering. They followed him to his car and pulled him over.
Wow.
And ultimately, I got him a good result because he had a prior DUI somewhere else. We worked it out where he was able to admit to it. However, in the long term, it wasn't a conviction. It was a compromise.
And what does a compromise mean? Like, there is compromises in this process?
There is. I mean, in this particular case, I filed a motion to dismiss, and the prosecutor, even though he had a prior DUI somewhere else, which would mean that if convicted, there would be jail time of 5 days at the time. Now it's 10 days. Prosecutor essentially saw where I was going with the motion, made an offer which wouldn't have been made for a second DUI. So it was a give and a take. We got the first DUI discounted. We got an offer where if the client did classes, did some other things, community service, after a year, he would come back and the case would be dismissed.
Wow.
Right.
And when they said remove, does it end up on your criminal? Do you get a criminal record?
Yes,
for?
you do. Yes,
Okay.
you do. Unfortunately, or depending on who you talk to. Yes, you do. A DUI nationally, it's being viewed as more serious. In the DMV area, there's been several high-profile cases. People being dragged, hit by DUI drivers, dragged on the beltway. People being killed by DUI drivers. So there's a movement in this area to take DUI more seriously. It is criminal. It's traffic, but it is criminal. And the reality is that it is on your record, cannot be removed from your record for policy reasons.
But you can get it expunged.
You cannot get a DUI expunged.
What?
Once convicted of a DUI, the law currently, a DUI cannot be expunged.
In Maryland and DC?
In Maryland and DC. If a DUI in Maryland is dismissed, it can be expunged. DC, same thing. But if you're convicted of the DUI, there is no mechanism to have it removed from your record.
Let's say you was convicted and it was like 1 day of jail.
It cannot be removed from your record. It will always, in DC, it's a conviction. It remains there. In Maryland, a PBJ can be removed.
What's a PBJ?
Probation before judgment, which is popular.
Can you just describe that?
Sure.
Because the average person doesn't know what that is.
Sure. Essentially what it is that the government says to you, okay, fine, this is your first DUI. We're going to go ahead and make you an offer that allows for your record to be clean. Mm-hmm. Except that you do certain things, you're on probation for normally a year, you do classes, think of driver's ed for a DUI. Let's say, you were speeding, there's an accident, you do a class for that also. Community service, and there's also a MAD class, Mothers Against Drunk Driving class, that you do an hour and a half. The dangers, people who have been hurt, injured, killed by DUI driving.
They have just a class for those people too?
They have a class for the person charged with the DUI to be educated on the dangers of drinking, driving, the consequences. You could kill somebody, you could hurt yourself, that kind of stuff.
Interesting. And have you defended someone that's killed someone?
No. I've never had that serious of a DUI. I've had accidents, I've had people who've been hurt, but no. Because then, let's be clear, that becomes manslaughter. That's a more... And
you couldn't actually, okay.
Right, that becomes manslaughter. Right, that's a murder.
But a manslaughter,
right.
It's not premeditated.
Right, exactly,
okay.
Right.
Okay, so you never dealt. Now, have you sat through these classes?
You know what? No, I haven't. I've gone online. I've done some reviews, just to get an idea of what my client's going to be doing, that kind of stuff. But I've never sat through an actual hour and a half class, that kind of stuff. No.
Okay. And do you feel that it changes the person who gets the DUI?
I think it does. I think the average person with a DUI never comes back.
So your clients don't come back to you?
No. I've had a couple, but the average DUI individual charged as much does not come back. The experience somehow, changes that person for the better, in the sense that the person understands that drinking and driving is just not. There's a judge who I referred to, years ago, who would always say a vehicle is a 5-ton, machine. And if you drink, you really have no ability, or at least limited ability, to control that vehicle.
And for those that are return people that come back to you, what is usually the issue?
I think sometimes it's a matter of personal issues going on with either work, family, school. I don't want to say cultural, but sometimes, there's an issue where they're from initially as a people, it's not that big a deal to get into a vehicle having consumed alcohol. So I think education, Montgomery County is trying to get that out, trying to address that issue where they're trying to address different cultural groups in terms of, events that are big in their lives, weddings, graduations, that kind of stuff.
And this would, because is drinking and not driving, is that just an American thing? Yeah. Would you know?
I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like, is that the idea of getting pulled over and actually going to jail for drinking while driving? Is that something that's only done in America? Like other cultures? You said other cultures are not.
I think what I find is that the deaths in this country is so, I think the stats are that each year in excess of 12,000 people die on the highways and roads of this country.
How many?
12,000 or more.
Wow.
And so therefore, when you compare that to maybe say in the Caribbean or in South America or in Africa, where maybe the stats are not kept, or maybe there's an accident, there's a death, and maybe no one really follows through to find out if there was alcohol involved, that kind of stuff, then we don't know.
Right. Compared
to here, where invariably an accident occurs, an officer comes out, and almost instinctively, or almost by route, or by odor, an officer, follows through, or suspects, or believes that drinking was involved here, and therefore those numbers are kept.
Interesting. Well, we are going to come back. This has been great information. I'll take a short break and come back, so please stay with us.
There's no one more deserving of our thanks than our nation's veterans. So when a veteran's dealing with an injury or health problem, it's a privilege to help and support them in their recuperation. Help Hospitalized Veterans has found a unique way to do just that. They pioneered the use of arts and craft kits as a therapeutic tool. HHV provides these kits to veterans to use in their homes at no charge. The kits can aid physical rehabilitation, and they're also a valuable tool to help veterans with PTSD. They provide a creative outlet, relieve stress, and they also remind our veterans that there are plenty of folks who really care about them and want to thank them for their service. In some areas, veterans can use the kits in the company of other veterans at local community craft centers. If you're a veteran receiving health care anywhere, call this number to receive your free kit or visit hhv.org to learn more. Thank you.
Welcome back to Chat with the Lawyer, and I'm here with Attorney K. Lawson Wellington talking about some very important issues of DUI. This has been a really interesting show. Now, let's go back into it. We talked about before in the first half about people, if you get in a car and you're just in the driver's seat, and maybe you just want to turn the air conditioner on. It's cold, it's hot, or it's cold, so you're going to turn the heat on. Could you do that?
You cannot. DUI.
And go into that a little more.
Back to earlier, same idea. You cannot be behind the wheel if you have been drinking. You cannot play with apparatus. You cannot have the keys in the ignition. The keys cannot be in the ignition if you had been drinking.
Interesting.
Same thing would apply if it was cold in the wintertime, had it on for heat, can't do that. You're in the car, listening to the radio, you cannot do that. you're in the car charging your phone, you cannot do that. You can't be in the car with a friend who's driving. The friend parks the vehicle, double park the vehicle somewhere, and then runs into the store, and you move over just to be,
Just to be in the seat.
you cannot be there.
Okay.
Because then you are in control of the vehicle, which you cannot do if you have been drinking.
Now, let me ask you, a lot of people go out. I know I go out with my friends. I might have a glass of wine. I love a glass of red wine. And a lot of people think a glass of red wine is, juice. Nothing will happen. I can jump in my car and drive. Or one beer. A lot of guys say, I'm going to have one beer and, I can drive. It's just a beer. Now go through the levels, because the breathalyzer comes in and a lot of people are shocked to see that they are charged with a DUI for a glass of wine.
Sure. So, to be clear, normally the glass of wine is going to be about a 0.02.
And what 0.02 means?
Your breath alcohol level.
Okay, and it starts from 0.
It does.
Okay, so no drinking, you're at 0.
Exactly.
Okay, and a glass of is O2.
Give or take, depending on height, body weight, how you've been eating, that kind of stuff. Technically, a glass of wine, a beer, alcohol. So you got to figure 2 glasses of wine at a 0.04. There's a DC Maryland dynamic which you have to be aware of. Nationally, you're drunk at 0.08. You're drunk at 0.08, which is about 4 drinks.
4 glasses of cocktails.
Right.
Okay,
But
so that's a lot.
But let's be clear. Is it within an hour? Is it within, 4-hour period, 3 hours, 2 hours? So always monitor, for example, when you got to a location and what you had, how long you're there, what you had in that period. Did you eat? Did you have some water with that? That kind of stuff. Because ultimately, you shouldn't be behind the wheels of a car within, say, 3 hours after your last drink. You should not be behind the wheels of a car. And again, it depends on weight, size, food in your body, that kind of stuff. DC is different from, say, Maryland. DC says you cannot have a drink and drive. Now, let's be clear. There's a DC presumption that if you're below a 0.05, that you're not drunk. But they'll still arrest you in DC because DC says 0 tolerance. Maryland, I've had incidents where an officer will pull you over, you'll do a test in the field, in the streets, 0.07. Officer may say to you, go on home, be careful. Some will arrest you, but because you're below a 0.08, the officer could say to you, go on home.
Now, if they do arrest you, and the person comes to you, do they get convicted?
Maryland is more lenient than DC in the sense that Maryland will offer you what's called a PBJ. I referred to that earlier.
Yeah.
So the average person, myself included, will take that. It's a safe route where you're saying, you know what, I'm guaranteed at the end this matter will be dismissed. But there are times when you're like, listen, no, my client weighs 175, he's 6'1", a 0.06 or 0.07, he's below the legal limit, and then the judge initially, but then a jury could also be in play in Maryland, because in Maryland, a jury matter is triggered by a DUI arrest. It's a 1-year offense in Maryland.
Interesting. And when you have a jury, how does the jury treat these cases?
You know what? It's easier for the defendant because you can have 1 or 2 or 3 people who will disagree with the government's case, the prosecutor's case, and therefore that person will hold out, that person will not vote to convict, that person will say, you know what, I've been there.
Everyone can see themselves having a one little drink.
They won't say it out, but you can, back of their mind, when they're deliberating, that person's thinking, that could be me, that kind of stuff. But yes, the dynamic is, it varies between DC and Maryland. DC, again, 0 tolerance. Maryland will say, okay, fine, a 0.07. An officer will make a call in the street to arrest or not arrest.
Okay. And over 0.8, you said at this point that's for, gin and tonics or something.
Yes, I mean, generally, a .02 is about one drink across the board. But again, shots, varies. Period of time varies because technically, a drink leaves your body after about an hour.
Oh, it does, okay.
After about an hour. So, but who's out for,
10 hours. Yeah.
right? And who monitors intake? Because who plans to have a DUI? So no one does. You're out, you're having fun. You don't really think about it all the way through like that because you're out to, celebrate an event, graduation, a wedding, that kind of stuff. I tell on my pages on Facebook, wherever, Uber. Uber. I mean, it's much cheaper, it's safer. Actually, and by the way, at MVA, they'll tell you. I mean, they'll say, download the Uber app. yes, download the app. Make it easier. I was in court in Silver Spring. I took Uber from there to Rockville, from court to court.
Well, Uber in Maryland sometimes can be expensive.
I had a client take Uber from Baltimore to come to court in Silver Spring.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so then if it's over .8, what type of jail time are you looking at?
DC, the first time, no jail time. Generally, not a guarantee, but generally probation.
Okay.
You're looking at the maximum penalty is about 6 months, a fine of $1,000. In Maryland, though, the maximum penalty for a first DUI could be a year. So therefore,
A year in jail?
Yes, could be. Again, on average, the first DUI, that's not done, but it could be.
Now, do you know someone that has gotten a year?
No.
Okay.
No, because again, it's on the books. The judge has the discretion to do or not do it. It could be 0 days, it could be 1 year.
Okay. So there's no minimum in DUIs?
There is no, there isn't. There's a fixed penalty, and the judge has discretion to impose across, yes.
And for your cases, what's the highest time that one of your clients has gotten?
I had a client some time back who got, I want to say about 4 months, but had previous convictions.
I see.
So therefore,
so that's
right,
why.
right.
And even with 4 months, did they actually spend it in jail?
In DC, yes. In DC, you get a day or two for good time, but for 4 months, you're doing at least, at least 110 days, 105 days, that kind of stuff.
And I guess some people don't put this all together. Like, if you're doing 1 to 10 days, are you doing it in a separate facility, or are you among criminals who have killed people?
You're doing it, well, that's the thing. You're doing it at jail. Criminals are sent away to prisons.
I see.
So you're doing it at the jail. DC jail, locally, Maryland, Upper Marlboro, locally.
Okay, so you won't be won't be spending time with someone who's doing 30.
No, you're not. No, you will not be. No.
Okay, all right. And in most sense, is it one of those things where you have to take the class and you have to do time?
Yes,
Okay.
if you're convicted. But let's be clear. The guy has come to you because he wants you to help him,
Right.
to defend him,
Right.
and I defend.
Right.
Because my job is not the same as the government's.
Right.
Clearly, we have two different roles.
Right.
The government's job is to try to convict him. My job is to, wait a minute, let's see whether the officer had reason to arrest my guy in the first place. So I take pride in that. Because I find too often that officers sometimes, they smell an odor of alcohol and they just go all over the place. Whereas, the client may have an odor of alcohol, but not enough for the officer to be convinced that he's impaired, such that a DUI should be charged, that kind of stuff.
Now let's go into the type of people who are charged for DUIs, because a lot of people assume that it's all really young college kids or maybe young professionals that just have no control. Are all of your clients very young?
No. My client base it varies. Professional people, teachers, nurses, doctors, lawyers, med students, law students. People work in schools, people who work, regular office jobs. So no, it varies. Age-wise, I had a client years ago as old as 64 years old, no priors, nothing. Yep. He went to a seminar, had some wine, and here we are, DUI.
Wow. And what if you were in a situation where the police knows that you were driving, has no proof of it, didn't see you in the car, but tells you, come get in your car? So what advice do you have for someone that maybe the police comes to their house and starts questioning them about a DUI? Would that happen?
No. I mean, could it? Yes. My experience, no.
Okay.
What you find is that officers, are in these club zones or just New York Avenue, Roland Avenue, Route 1.
So you're going over the streets. What are the streets? You said New York Avenue.
New York Avenue is very popular. Route 1 is very popular. Georgia Avenue, leaving the city. 14th Street. Anything that goes into Virginia is very popular.
Okay.
And these officers, my opinion, my experience, they know the club zones, and they, my opinion, traverse those club zones, and they are out there looking for. Actually, if you listen to public radio, you'll hear it all the time. DUI patrols are out.
Pay attention to that.
Pay attention to that. Holiday period, any holiday period, I find officers tend to ramp up their DUI patrols. Okay. And let's be clear, I mean, there are times when officers are just out there on his regular route, because all too often the first contact isn't by a DUI officer. It's by a regular officer who's just in the street.
I see.
And then he calls in a DUI officer.
Okay. Well, this has been great information. If someone wants to get in contact with you, they want to know more about, they have questions about DUI, they have a DUI, they want to get in contact, how do they get in contact with you?
Sure. Go to my website, www.wellingtonlawdc.com. Of course, my number is 202-486-1186, but primarily my website.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show. We hope that you enjoyed this show. If you want to check out more of our episodes, you can go to www.chatwiththelawyer.tv. I'm your host, Walla Blagay, and we hope that we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Knowing that you have the power to give someone else a chance to live a healthy, productive life is the greatest gift. I'm London Fletcher, linebacker for the Washington Redskins. Anyone can choose to be a champion. Sign up to be an organ donor today, and be sure to tell your family about your decision. Did you know that a single donor can save or improve the lives of up to 50 people? Let's be real, you don't need them when you're gone, but others do. You have the power to donate life.
Sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor at beadonor.org.